Imagine you're 24 years old. You are a nurse from a small town in Ohio. You grew up hearing the sound of the county fair in August, not artillery. You have never seen a jungle. You have never been afraid of a night that had no electricity because there was always a light somewhere on your street. But today, the jungle is all you have. You're standing on a dusty road in Bataan, Philippines. The air is so thick you can chew it. The road behind you is full of men who are sick and barefoot, and the road in front of you, you don't know what's on that road. The only thing between you and a Japanese bayonet is the white uniform you're wearing. And right now, you are not thinking about the history books. You are not thinking about the war. You're just thinking one thing. I wonder if I will ever see my mother's kitchen again. There were 87 of them in the beginning. American military nurses, most of them young, most of them volunteers. They had arrived in the Philippines with new uniforms and starched white caps, thinking they were headed somewhere warm and interesting, somewhere far from the gray Ohio winters and the quiet boredom of peacetime. The war had other plans. When Japan attacked on December 8, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor, these women did not run. They were already in the hospitals, already working. They moved their patients into the jungle. They dug into the volcanic rock of Bataan and set up surgical wards under canvas, under trees, under the open sky. They operated during air raids. They held flashlights in their teeth and kept their hands steady when the ground shook. They weren't icons yet. They weren't the Angels of Bataan. They were just exhausted women with blisters on their feet and the smell of ether on their hands, doing the work that was in front of them because there was no one else to do it. When the order came to surrender, when the Philippine and American forces on Bataan finally collapsed in April of 1942 under starvation and disease, these women did not weep. They did something much harder than weeping. They smoothed their skirts, and they pinned their hair back, and they walked toward the enemy. They decided that if they were going to meet the Japanese as prisoners, they were going to meet them as officers. Heads up, back straight. Not one of them broke formation. Santo Tomas internment camp, Manila. Later, Los Baños. These were the names of the places where they were held. The buildings were crowded, and the food was almost nothing. By 1944, each woman was receiving less than 1,000 calories a day. Some days, less than that. Their bodies began to eat themselves, muscle first, then reserve, then something harder to name. The camp doctors had a word for it. The nurses simply called it getting thin. But here's the thing about captivity that the history books tend to leave out. It creates a kind of intimacy that nothing else can manufacture. These women had come from different states, different cities, different temperaments. Some of them hadn't liked each other very much in the beginning. But 3 years in a bamboo barracks, in the dark, with the fear pressing in, that changes the arithmetic of who matters. There was a nurse named Maud. On the night of a particularly brutal roll call, when a young soldier, just a few cots over, had stopped responding, when the light had gone out of him quietly, the way it sometimes did, Maud reached into the hidden pocket sewn into the seam of her dress. She had been saving something for 2 weeks. A single hard candy, the color of amber, wrapped in a scrap of paper. She split it in half with her thumbnail in the dark, and she pressed half of it into the hand of the woman lying next to her without a word. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. That is the secret the Angels of Bataan carried out of those camps. Not heroism, not strategy, just the knowledge, deep in their bones, that the only way to survive something unsurvivable is to decide, every single morning, in the dark, that the person next to you matters more than your own fear. 1,000 days. That is approximately how long the women were held. 1,000 mornings of waking up and not knowing if today was the day they would be moved or punished or simply left to get thinner in the heat. The dysentery came in waves. So did the malaria. Some women contracted both at once. They treated each other with whatever they could find: bark, improvised compresses, the sheer willpower of sitting with someone through the night and making sure they were still breathing by morning. They were nurses, even here, even as prisoners, even when their own patients were each other. The Japanese guards were not always cruel. History is rarely that tidy. Some were indifferent. Some were occasionally quietly kind. One guard, the nurses later recalled, used to leave an extra portion of rice near the door of the medical ward without looking at anyone. He never did it when another guard was watching. He never did it when anyone was watching. He just left it and walked away. Nobody ever knew his name. In 1944, as the American forces began to push back through the Pacific, the mood inside the camp shifted. It was not hope, exactly. Hope is too bright a word for what it felt like. It was more like a change in pressure, a sense that the walls might eventually have an outside. February 23, 1945. American paratroopers came in at dawn. It was a raid, one of the most precise rescue operations of the entire Pacific War, and it lasted exactly 41 minutes from the first jump to the last prisoner loaded onto an amphibious vehicle. When the soldiers came through the gate, they expected to find the wreckage of 3 years. And in some ways, they did. But then the nurses came out. 77 of them. In formation. The soldiers have been trained for almost everything, but they hadn't been trained for this. For women who had lost 30 pounds each, who had buried colleagues from disease, who had eaten bark soup and called it dinner, walking out of that gate like they were reporting for duty. 3 years, 1,000 days of starvation and fear and the particular darkness of not knowing if anyone was coming. When the gates finally opened, the world expected to find ghosts. Instead, it found 77 women standing in formation. They had lost their health. They had lost their youth. They had lost their peace, the deep, unconditional peace that most of us take for granted, the peace of sleeping without listening for footsteps. They would never fully get that back. But not one of them had lost her life. They had saved each other. They had done it one day at a time, one split candy, one extra bowl of rice, one hand in the dark at a time, and they had brought all 77 of them home. We talk a lot about the glory of war. We talk about the battles and the turning points and the generals who made the decisive calls. We name things after them: bridges, airports, highways. We put their faces on stamps.